morning, everyone. Today, Chief Manley will be announcing progress on his goals and some new initiatives of the police department. And it's my pleasure to be here in support of his efforts and the direction that he is taking. It was just over 100 days ago, back in June, when I appointed Brian to lead our police department. At that time, I also outlined my expectations for him as we work together to build a safer, more resilient community. I'm proud of the work that Chief Manley has done in that time. I know we have more work to do, but it is important to come before you here today to report on some of the progress that we have made and outline the direction of where we want to go in the future. With that, Chief Manley.
Well, good morning, and thank you all for coming out and giving us this opportunity to update you on where we're at on some key projects at the Austin Police Department and the direction that we're going to go in the future. But before I start, as you can tell, I've got a large group with me here today because, again, this is setting the direction forward for this department, so it was important that everybody be here. Obviously, the city manager has already spoken, but we've got Assistant City Manager Ray Ariano here with me as well, along with my entire executive team and the Lieutenant Gaslin, who oversees our community outreach as well. So as we push forward, it's important that everyone be present for this. I want to start by going over the Matrix report. As you all will remember, back in 2016, we brought in a group called the Matrix Corporation to look at the Austin Police Department, to look at our community policing efforts and really identify ways that we could enhance our service to the community. The result of that study was a list of several recommendations on ways that we can improve policing in Austin, improve the community policing philosophy, direction, and really the policies, and then the staffing necessary to do such. So we've looked at that report over 2 years, and a lot of work has been done to make progress on that. And as I stand here today, I'm going to highlight what is the report that we will be putting on our website and will be available for everyone to look at. This really is a progress report on where we're at as a department when it comes to community policing. And I say it's a progress report because this will be a living document. This will be a document we will continue to update as we continue to make advancements in community policing. The purpose of this, again, is to inform the community on the steps that we've taken. And many of these steps were actually taken in collaboration with the community, with a lot of input from the community. So when you look at this report, what you'll see in the back is a table that actually outlines each and every one of the recommendations, and then it gives a status update of where we are at with that recommendation. If it has been completed, or if it is in progress, or if it is one of the two that we were not moving towards implementation. But then there's also a reference back to the original Matrix report, so you can see what that discussion was about, and then a reference to the page within this report that highlights the steps that we've taken to implement that. Again, this was a review of our department that we took very seriously, and I'm proud to say the men and women of the Austin Police Department have worked diligently towards advancing community policing, and a lot of that work is highlighted in this report. It was also important that we identify ourselves in a way that reflects the values of this department, the values of this community, and the expectations that both city management and I have. So to that end, we actually have a new brand for the Austin Police Department. The brand for the Austin Police Department is One Austin, Safer Together. And that's important for two reasons. First of all, One Austin. We are One Austin. We can look at the history of Austin, and we can look at Austin being a city that was built around segregation and realize that those days are long gone. We are one Austin. We are one community. But within our community, there are many sub-communities, and as a police department, we have to focus on making sure all of our efforts are geared towards keeping all of Austin safe. We are proud to be the 5th safest major city when it comes to violent crime in America, but we also know that not all of Austin feels that same way. We are one Austin, and we need to ensure that we're making efforts to keep all of Austin safe. And safer together is important because anytime one part of our community is under attack, or anytime one part of our community feels like they cannot come to the police for help, our entire community suffers, and our entire community is less safe. So One Austin, Safer Together, This is our new brand, this is what we stand for, and this is how we will gear all of our efforts going forward. You will begin to see this around all of our documents that we put out, may end up on our police cars as well. We really want to push this out so that everybody understands this new branding for our department. We also have a new mission and a new vision statement for the Austin Police Department. We obviously, for our mission, want to keep you, your family, and our community safe through innovative strategies and community engagement. I think there's key components there. We've always had a mission that wanted to keep you, your family, and our community safe, but we want to do it now through innovative strategies, first of all, because Austin is always seen as a city of innovation. We are an innovation hub. We are an incubator for new businesses, many of whom move to Austin to capitalize on what we have here. The police department should be no different. We should continually look for ways not only to advance our department, but to advance our profession. And we are committed to doing that. And that is what is reflected in this mission, and that is what will continue to be reflected in our actions. And also, we want to do this through community engagement because, again, we recognize the importance of involving the community in everything that we do. When we look at our vision, that end state that we want to get to, we want to be a police department that's trusted and respected by all, and that collaborates with our community to make Austin the safest city in America. And we've talked about this a little bit, even back during the vetting process to be the chief, but I think it's important, again, to highlight a few key components, again, to demonstrate what we are committed to here as a police department. That we want to be trusted and respected by all for the reasons I mentioned before, that Austin has a history of segregation, and we are a community built of many sub-communities. We must have trust within each and every one of those communities, and we must make sure that everything we do is geared towards building that trust and building that legitimacy. We want to be engaged with the community. We want to partner with them. And again, we want to push towards making Austin the safest city in America. Now, some say that's a lofty goal, but if we're not pushing this organization to our limits, if we're not striving to be the safest city in America, then we're not pushing ourselves hard enough. So that is the vision that we have for pushing this organization forward, working with the community, again, to make us the safest city in America. We also looked at community policing. One of the things that we recognized is that we've been a department that's talked about community policing for quite some time. We've actually trained community policing in the academy, but we never had a specific community policing policy. This had come up in both our internal analysis as well as through the matrix review. We now have a community policing policy, and we now have a definition of community policing so that officers will understand the drive of this department, the direction of this department, and we have a policy that now addresses that. But when we look at community policing, we want to build positive relationships, one contact at a time, by being present, engaged, and visible in our community to address crime and to improve the general well-being of residents and visitors to Austin. I don't want to take the time here today to break that down, but there are several subcomponents of that. The most important one is we recognize it is done one contact at a time. And these are the discussions we're having, that every contact we have with members of our community is an opportunity to move the needle on police and community relationships, and we must make sure that we're always moving that needle in the right direction. The policy itself will give concepts and ideas on both community policing goals and objectives, and then ways by which we can measure ourselves to ensure that we are achieving those. At the end of the day, this is the core mission of the Austin Police Department. One of the other focus areas was the health and wellness of the men and women of the Austin Police Department. We know all too well the demands that this job places on the men and women who serve, being exposed to the worst humanity has to offer on a regular basis when we see some of the violent crimes that we see, or some of the other horrific instances. And unfortunately, we see the toll that that takes on our officers. To this end, we put together a health and wellness committee, and it is chaired by our lead chaplain, Rick Randall. And this is a committee that is going to be focused on improving the outcomes for our officers by improving the services available to them so that they are as healthy and as well as they can be, because we all know that a workforce that is healthy and well will be a workforce that will be top performing, and that's what we want to make sure we have. But we also want to make sure we address the sometimes the outcomes or the decisions that are a byproduct of the stresses that you're exposed to in this career. I bring that up today because the subcommittee has made a lot of progress in these first 100 days already that we're looking at. There are actually 5 subgroups now because this was too big of a topic to be addressed as a whole. We have a subgroup that is focused on the education and risk reduction. This work group focuses on the training and practices that can reduce the harm to our employees, specifically the unhealthy coping mechanisms that officers sometimes gravitate towards to deal with the stresses of this job, whether that be post-traumatic stress disorder, whether that be alcoholism or anything along those lines. We've got the identification and early warning work group, and they're focused on identifying behaviors or circumstances that might lead to an employee who is at risk. This group is working on identifying checklists for indicators supervisors can look for to identify as early as possible an officer who may be in need of services or assistance, and then a process by which we will link them to those services or assistance. There's a treatment work group, and they've been looking into treatment options for employees once they've been identified as having a need for assistance. And we're so fortunate that this working group has been able to partner not only with Del Seton University Hospital, but also with local therapists so that we're bringing in outside expertise into this area to, again, ensure we're providing the best level of service. There's an organizational wellness and research group that's looking at the overall health and wellness of the organization and actually surveying employees to get a sense from the employee's perspective what is needed and what can we do more with. And we're fortunate that we've been able to partner with the Texas State University in this endeavor, and they're taking lead in assisting us with performing this survey. And then lastly, we've got the policies and procedures work group, and what they're tasked with is identifying how will we implement the solutions that come forward from all of these working groups. This is meant not only to make the Austin Police Department healthy, to make us better, but also it demonstrates the commitment we have to the men and women who serve, and I do believe that our organization in this city will be better because we'll be being served by men and women who are healthy and who are well. We are starting a cadet class next week. We expect this cadet class will have 94 men and women come through the door on day 1, and we're excited about this class. We need these officers, and again, this goes to really the call to serve. If you have a call to serve as a police officer, it doesn't matter what the national rhetoric or local conversations or any of that might be surrounding policing, you want to serve. So even in these difficult times, we were able to successfully recruit 94 qualified men and women. There were many more who applied that did not meet our high standards that will start our academy next week. We are unveiling here at the end of the press conference, once the question and answer session is over, our new recruiting website. This is a recruiting website that really pushes us to the next level, and I think will allow us to continue to compete and draw the best police officer candidates to Austin to serve in the Austin Police Department. Previously, our website, we had made some updates to it. Our video was like many other police departments' videos. It showed all of the high-speed activities, whether it be the SWAT team or the bomb squad or the lake patrol, but it didn't necessarily highlight that service core that's at our organization. So we had already updated that video and put a new recruiting video that better demonstrated what the job of an Austin police officer entails, really that service side of the job. We had also included a simple question on the cadet application, asking them, what volunteer work have you already done in your life prior to applying? Because that demonstrates the heart of an applicant. It's not necessarily a qualifier or a disqualifier. It just gives us another lens into these men and women who are applying to serve here. But we recognize that we have to keep up with the times as well. And I think when you see this recruiting website that we will unveil today, it is interactive. It allows for potential candidates to see themselves in the Austin Police Department. There are testimonials from officers across the department that reflect different genders, different ethnicities, and different occupations within the job, so that men and women who are considering a career at the Austin Police Department will have a really good idea of whether they think they are a right fit for our department and whether they're a right fit for law enforcement. So this is a website that we're very proud of, and Ms. Ashley Avance has put a tremendous amount of work into this, and she will be demonstrating this for you at the conclusion of this press conference. And Manager, the last thing that I do want to touch on is back in June, when you gave me this great opportunity to serve as the permanent police chief. We did talk about expectations for the police department, and specifically expectations for me leading the department. And I want to give just an update on some of those areas to show progress that we've already made in those 100 days. The first, as it should be and as you would expect it to be, was safety. That is ultimately the role of a police department, and to that end, there were expectations to ensure Austin remains one of the safest cities in America and to reduce the crime rate and deter criminal activity. Austin has been the 5th safest major city when it comes to violent crime, and those statistics were just released again for this past year, and we retained that position. We are still the 5th safest major city when it comes to violent crime. We actually saw an improvement in property crime. We moved from the 13th safest city to the 11th safest city. Now, we did take steps this year because we know that we had increases in violent crime both in 2016 and 2017, 12% and 3% respectively. We didn't want to just sit back and not address that, so we put together a violent crimes task force that is focusing on those repeat offenders that are really putting other people's lives at risk and the safety of the community at risk. This team has been out there and they've been very effective, and where we sit this year through August, we are currently experiencing a 3.8% decrease in violent crime. So I think this highlights really the hearts and the dedication of the men and women who serve at the Austin Police Department, that they are continuing to put everything forward in keeping this community safe, especially when it comes to violent crime, and we can look at the outcomes that we've had. In the area of community policing, there was an interest in increasing community policing training during the academy, training specifically in the area of diversity training. We added 2 weeks to the police academy, so this class that starts next week will have an additional 2 weeks, and a good part of that training will involve additional diversity training. One of the things we committed to do, and we will do it with this very first class that we've had the opportunity to do, that is bring in outside expertise, bring in community members to assist us in teaching diversity. So we are currently working to put together the program that will bring in 8 community leaders from different groups that will help teach our cadets the important area of diversity. This is underway, and I think that this will add to the diversity training that we have already done as an organization for so many years, but that we have to, again, make sure we're keeping up with, staying current, and this is going to be a great improvement. In the area of being supportive of oversight, both inside and outside of contract, those meetings continue. I and members of my executive team have sat on the subcommittees that are working on this, and we actually have a final meeting today. Again, this is all pushing towards identifying what that should look like for our community as we move forward. There was a focus on enhancing de-escalation training with more effective response to individuals with those in mental health crisis. We all know too often that the intersection of law enforcement and mental health consumers is fraught with bad outcomes, and there have been lives lost. And we are committed to doing everything we can do as a police agency to train our officers and equip them to handle these situations in the most peaceful way possible given those circumstances. To that end, we will begin the training that we've been talking about for a while now on October 1st when our new training cycle starts for the ICAT program, the Integrated Communication Assessment and Tactics. And every single Austin police officer will go through this training, and we're front-loading our patrol officers to give them the earliest access so we can get this training out to them. And we also know that through the recent budget process, Council added additional money into our budget to look at the best way to build a program for interacting with the mental health community and the mental health clients. So we're going to work with our partners, both internal and external stakeholders, again, to review how we currently approach calls involving those with mental health illness and ways that we can improve and advance that. There was also an expectation that I have department-wide conversations with members of the police department talking about specifically de-escalation tactics and training, the whole guardian versus warrior discussion. over about a 6-week period, I held meetings with the entire membership of the Austin Police Department. I and my executive team held large meetings where all of the department came in, both commissioned and civilian, and we talked about de-escalation. We talked about training, but we talked about a lot of other issues as well. We talked about the health and wellness of our officers. We talked about the importance of this new vision and this drive for community policing. And we talked about identifying the stress and morale issues so that we can make sure, again, that these officers are out there with every opportunity to succeed, and that we meet the high expectations that we place upon ourselves and that the community rightfully places on us as well. We talked also a lot about diversion and about respect and dignity and how we interact with the community. A few of the other areas was to have the Equity Office perform an equity assessment on APD, and that work has already begun. The area of supporting the homeless outreach street team, we continue to support that and dedicate officers towards that. And then lastly, there was the importance of focusing on the sobriety center and supporting that to reduce the number of arrests for public intoxication. And as you all know, we opened up the sobriety center and are supporting that and have seen positive outcomes to this point. So that will conclude my prepared comments for today, but this was again an important opportunity to highlight the progress that we've made as an organization and really to put out the report that demonstrates the hard work the men and women of the Austin Police Department have done over the past 2 years to implement best practices and strategies towards a really successful community policing program. What you'll see behind us on the walls are the plaques that will actually hang in every substation and every police facility across the city so that all officers every single day will be reminded of what the vision, what the mission, what the expectations of this police department are as we go out and serve our community daily. So with that, unless there's any initial comments, I will open it up for questions. And as a reminder, at the conclusion of this, we will have a demonstration of the new website for our recruiting department.
Yeah, Chief, I have a question. You talked about mental health, and you said the training begins on October 1st. When can we expect to see the effects of that training on the street with officers responding to calls? Because you can't predict when you're going to have a mental health call.
Certainly. So the training that's going to begin on October 1st is going to be the Integrated Communication Assessment and Tactics Training. And this is a program that's put on by the Police Executive Research Forum. This will take place over the 2-year training cycle that we're entering. But as I said, all frontline patrol officers will have priority and will attend the earliest session so that we can push that through the frontline patrol division first and then roll it out to the rest of the department.
And so that means within a few months, maybe we'll begin to see the frontline patrol officers patrolling informed by the training?
Absolutely. Within the month of October, we will have already had some officers go through it, and then that will just continue as the months advance.
How about the police contract?
The negotiations are still underway on the contract.
Is there anything that the police department wants from the city, since we also have the city manager here? And if you could speak to it as well.
Sure.
You know, what is, obviously, it ran out last year, so what are the final holdouts?
So I'll say from my end, I'm proud of the fact that since I started, we have been at the table with the association and have made significant progress on a number of issues. A few months earlier, the council directed the manager to look into best practices over police oversight. And so as the chief mentioned, those conversations have been going on. They've been very productive. They've looked at best practices across the country, and the recommendations from that working group are forthcoming. They have their final meeting today. At the conclusion of that will really allow us to then move forward with the final negotiations with the association.
We're now nearing a year since APD rolled out body cameras to most patrol officers. We still haven't seen any footage from any officer-involved shootings released to the public at this point. Do you have any plans to be more transparent with footage collected on body-worn cameras in the future?
So we respond to each and every request, whether it be a data request or a video request, under the established Freedom of Information Act laws. And there are specific laws governing what can and cannot be released on body camera footage. So as you have an interest in those videos and you file those requests, we have to vet those through that law as well. So I expect that the increased transparency that we've already seen through the process we have in place with the district attorney now, where in those cases that do not go to a grand jury for review, the declination letters are issued that give a really good insight into the investigation and the decision that was made. So I think that we have improved transparency, and we will continue to comply with the laws around specifically the body cameras as we go forward.
You mentioned you have 94 people in this upcoming cadet class. What is the officer deficit right now? Does this cadet class, if they graduate, all of them, does that fill the deficit? And what do you expect what has been happening in the 100 days to impact officer turnover?
So where we're at right now, I don't have the exact number, but our vacancy right now in the department is going to be in the range of 60. Based on the recent class that just graduated. So having 94 start is very positive. Our average attrition rate is about 5 per month. And so we know that when this class graduates, it's going to get us much more closely to our authorized strength level, and we're already recruiting for the next cadet class. So all of the vacancies are taken into account every time we set up the recruiting goals for the next class, and this is something that we're looking at.
When does the next cadet class begin?
To that date, I believe it's in April, but we'll get you that date.
Are the cadets that are being recruited for that class still being recruited under the guidelines of the old contract, or are they now subject to a civil service test yet?
This will be the first class that we will recruit under Civil Service 143.
So the test that they had to take has been drawn up and completed, and so they're just coming through on a test basis solely?
So they will all take a test. We've got the vendor hired, and they're working on that test, and then they will all come in and take that test, and that will start the process.
Does that concern you that you don't have the same vetting for officers you did in the past without contract for these new officers coming in?
You know, I've spoken before when we've had conversations about the contract and what we lost when we fell out of meet and confer, and recruiting was one of those areas where I've expressed a concern. We'll see what happens as we go through this process. That one thing I can assure you is we will not be reducing standards. We will continue to only hire the men and women who meet the high standards that we have for the department. But I'm sensing that when unveil this website here later on today, that this again will help us advance reaching out to potential applicants and showing them what a career at APD would have to offer.
Last question. Good.
All right, thank you. We'll do a demonstration of the website now. If you'll give us a minute to get the screens down, and then we'll all move out of the way so that you all can see that. So.